But before that, Prince Harry and his now infamous trip to Las Vegas have dominated the headlines this week. That looks set to continue, with some papers reporting this morning that there could be more photographs to come. But while the young royal may have proved that what happens in Vegas doesn't always stay there, is he also proof that the so-called spare heir is always destined to make the news for the wrong reasons? Well, the royal historian Kate Williams has very kindly joined us this morning. Kate, spare heir, we've been using that phrase a few times this morning. It's quite unkind, isn't it?
It isn't fair. It isn't fair. It comes from the old tradition that the aristocracy, the duty, of course, of an aristocratic and royal wife is to have children. And you have the heir and you have the spare. Of course, that means two boys, until the recent change in which it now William and Kate have a child. The little girl will inherit if it's first. But that was two boys, spare heir and the spare. That's your duty done. So the spare is really just there in case the heir dies. So it's not much fun, really. There's no particular role, and it has been difficult for the spares, rather cruelly as they're called, throughout history. Of course, the one we see most obviously, most memorably, is Princess Margaret, who began a relationship with Peter Townsend, the equerry, who was in a relationship, who was married, and then she wanted to marry him when he was divorced. Her life was very unhappy, very sad at the end. But we've also seen some spares who throughout history have just used this as an excuse to have absolutely loads of fun. They've been fun-loving, they've been like Prince Harry, because there's just been so much temptation. There's, you know, when you're a prince, you've got status, you've got influence, you've got members of the opposite sex, you know, you are absolutely a prize for them, and it's really hard to resist temptation. When we look in British history, it's actually much easier to find naughty royals, naughty princes, than it is to be the good ones. It's often the ladies like Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth the first and second who are a bit more saintly. Luckily, our Queen Elizabeth fell in love with Philip when she was 13 and never wanted anyone else. But
the problem, I guess, the difficulty that Harry faces now is that those historical royals that you allude to didn't have to deal with the modern media, didn't have to deal with social media, didn't have to deal with photographs that can publish a picture to the internet in seconds.
Well, you're so right, Roger. I mean, this is it. Privacy, of course, this has become a whole issue about privacy over the last week. Privacy is almost impossible when you're at camera phones. You can look like you're sending an email and snap, 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 and, you know, no one knows you're taking their photo. And photos in private places. I mean, you know, Harry can be photographed the whole time, and these photos they are massive commodities. They are selling for huge amounts of money. And what interests me a lot about this is how, you know, the newspapers have obviously been very restrained, and a lot of the conversation has been, why aren't the newspapers printing, but it's out there on the internet. I mean, very like in 1936, when all the newspapers in America were printing the news that the King, Edward VIII, was having an affair with Mrs. Simpson. The British newspapers stayed quiet about it because they were concerned about palace reprisals, but also they thought the British public would be very angry about it. They would actually go against the newspaper and hate the editor. And I'll be interested to see if these girls sell their story, and any of it's particularly kind of racy, if all those details get into the British papers, because we love our royal family here, and people don't like to see it.
And that is the defence of the newspapers that have published the photos, isn't it? That they're out there, everybody can see them on the internet now, so why not publish them?
Well, I mean, to me, that's a bit of a strange argument, because there's all sorts of stuff on the internet, including things that are illegal to be published. Of course, there are names of accusers, there are names of course. You know, we had a big controversy when the accusers of Julian Assange were named on Newsnight, and Craig Murray said, well, they're on the internet, and that doesn't mean anything. I mean, the law is the law. And I think that just a lot of the stuff on the internet we don't need to see in the papers. And of course, the papers, we trust them. They are fact-checked, they are there to give us news. The internet is all sorts of stuff. So I think that is one argument, but the problem is that once these pictures get out there, everyone's going to look at them, and they become in the news themselves, and they are the news now.
And they are in danger of overshadowing a young man who does a lot for charity, who, excuse me, has fought for his country in Afghanistan, who many people would quite rightly say does an awful lot of good for the country.
You're absolutely right, Roger. I mean, Harry used to be a party prince. When he was younger, he wanted to be a professional polo player, and Prince Charles said to him that's not really acceptable. And he's been great for charity. He's done all this work for the armed forces. He's been brilliant in the armed forces, and we love his sense of humour. We love the fun, Harry. Last year in the royal wedding, he cheered up the bridesmaids, the little ones who were getting a bit bored, by teasing them with a floppy spider, and we love that part of him. And, you know, sometimes that gets a bit more exciting, but at the moment, because we haven't really had any further revelations, if there isn't anything more exciting to come, he stays popular. I mean, we've had a lot of complaints, over 850, I believe, to The Sun about printing those pictures.
Yeah.
And apparently, we all want to go to Vegas now. Apparently, the bookings to Vegas have soared. I don't know if you've been, Roger. I haven't been since I was 10.
I haven't. I don't know whether I'll ever get to.
You're not going to go. I haven't been since I was a little girl, but I think it's going. I think, you know, there'll be party like Prince Harry in Vegas everywhere now in Vegas.
Kate, it's great to see you.
Thanks
very much indeed for coming in to talk to us. That is it from breakfast this morning.